Hey, it's Drybear. We finished our weapon guide series a couple weeks ago, but with the launch of Season 1 in the First Descendant, we have a brand new weapon to look at, so today we're going to deep dive into the Excava. Now, as it sits right now for the Excava, it is good enough. If you use the seasonal buff that you get inside of the inversion reinforcement and you build the weapon correctly, it can do decent damage. Unfortunately, it is not broken OP, it is not the best weapon in the game, and it's not really going to hold a candle to all the best weapons that we have right now. Nazash's Devotion, Secret Garden, Enduring Legacy, all of those are going to outperform the Excava. But it's a pretty cool weapon, so let's talk about what it does and how to build it. So the Excava is an assault rifle, and it has a very unique function. The stats itself, by default, are not anything to write home about, unfortunately. The base firearm crit rate is 3%, the base crit damage scaling is 1.2, and the base weak point is 1.4. Pretty abysmal for an assault rifle, though there are some saving graces based on that. It also has an effective range drop-off start at 30. You would want a rifle like this to probably be closer to 35 or 40, but 30 to 55 is on the lower end for assault rifles, so it's not the best, and it goes down to 0.4 at 55 meters. So you can still get decent damage out of it, so we're still talking about 1, 2, 3. It starts dropping off at about this distance, which is pretty reasonable for most encounters in the First Descendant as a rifle goes. Now, the way the passive works is that when you shoot and hit a target, you will build up stacks of its initial passives. You'll notice that as I shoot this target, I'm now getting volatile charge. This builds up, and when it gets to max stacks, I get a charge of the final charge. This is 3 charges for this. So you can build up 3 stores of an electric grenade in the weapon, and then while that is active, you can see it fans open and shows this really cool VFX. They have this tendency of, like, if the weapon's the cooler it is, the more powerful it is, so it seems like it's kind of suffering that way. So this functions just like the Peacemaker. If you have the charge ready and you just do hip fire, it won't consume the charge. But if you do ADS or aim down sights, it will. So if we hold right click or left trigger on your console and you fire, it will release the electric grenade, lose its charge, and reset back to 0. What's cool about this, though, unlike the Peacemaker, is you can actually build up multiples of this. It can go up to 3 stacks total. So if you can get these stacks up to 1, then we can get a second charge, and then we get a third charge, and it will multiply the explosion for all of the charges that you currently have to a maximum of 540% firearm damage when the weapon is fully maxed out. So you'll have to complete the battle pass to get the last version of the weapon, but you'll see that we have 3 stacks of our electric grenade, so that when we aim at a target and release, it'll do 3 times the damage to do that explosion. However, unlike Thunder Cage and Greg's Reversed Fate and Fallen Hope and some of these other effects, even Kingsguard Lance and things like that, the electric grenade is not area of effect. So if I build it up, you'll notice that I have this. If I shoot the grenade right next to this guy, it didn't even hit him. That shows how big it does have a very minuscule, tiny AoE, but it's so small that you can just pretend it doesn't exist. It is a single target electric grenade that does single target damage. So you don't really get a lot of mobbing value out of it compared to like Thunder Cage or Greg's Reversed Fate. In this case, it is just a single target burst. And the burst, unfortunately, because of how many shots it takes to build up, without any upgrades, the passive goes, this is the baseline version, it's 36 stacks. When you upgrade this, because I have 3 versions of the Excava in my inventory that I use this to test the different levels of the passive. So we have that there. This will stack up to 28. So it goes down to 28. It gets easier to stack up, but it's still a lot. That's 84 rounds you have to fire before you can fully stack the passive and then release it, which takes, on average, with fully maxed out, properly built weapon, it'll take you about 7.9 seconds to get 3 charges of the passive. If you don't have a built weapon, it can take upwards of 12 to 13 seconds, which means, yes, you're getting 540% weapon damage with 3 charges, but that's happening very infrequently, and it doesn't even have an AoE, right? So you're not going to get the bonus there. So that's kind of a downside for the weapon overall. But there is one saving grace for the weapon, and that is inside of the seasonal progression system, the inversion reinforcer that you get by completing invasion dungeons, there is an Excava specific buff. And what this does is that if you get energy grenade to 3 charges instead of firing early, because you can fire the electric grenade grenade at 1 or 2 charges. If you get to 3, you'll get a 2-second buff window from this that gives you 35% firearm attack for 2 seconds, and then it goes on cooldown. Now, next week they did say they were going to remove all of the negatives from all of these passives. It could be that they pull off the cooldown on this, so it's always available, because it still takes quite a while to build up the passive. But the best usage for this weapon is to hip fire exclusively. Do not ADS, because you will consume the electric grenade, and you want to max out rounds and firearm attack in order to make that shot as high as possible. It doesn't scale off of crit. It doesn't scale off of weak point. You can't really make the shot much better, but the best usage is to use the seasonal buff, get all the way up to 3-step charges, and before the buff goes away, release it with ADS and go back to firing as well. Just make sure you don't miss that 2-second window, because as soon as you get the 3rd energy grenade stack, it will trigger the 2-second window of firearm attack. You want to ADS and fire in that window, and then reset and go back to it again. And this is my final build sheet for the Excava. This is with the seasonal buff active at all times, and the final DPS comes to 826k, which puts it about a tamer level of DPS. It's not really crazy, but it is still decent. If you wanted to build the Excava because you like the weapon or you want to use it, it is a weapon that does scale decently enough that you're able to get some value out of that. So for this weapon specifically, I would recommend going for sharp precision shot. Real life fighter, because you're going to be hip firing the entire time, is kind of inconsistent and a little bit unreliable, so you want to go for sharp precision. Plus, the increased fire rate from sharp precision will allow you to stack the passive faster, which will be super useful. Then you want at least weapon tuning and expand weapon charge. This is because every multiple of 28 that you get in your magazine, you can start getting multiple charges of your passive without having to reload. So getting extra rounds on the weapon is super valuable. And I would actually run the firearm attack, bonus versus Colossi, crit damage, and rounds for the weapon as well. The extra rounds, again, is going to help us with stacking that passive. On top of that, we want rifling reinforcement, action and reaction, and I think you can run electric enhancement as well, just because there is a passive element that does down on electric resistance on the weapon. So this passive down here will actually stack up to 10% total, so you can actually get 10% minus electric resistance. A lot of the down debuffs in the game aren't super great right now, but it is enough that you could run electric attack on reroll if you wanted to, or you could also run with with electric enhancement as your weapon. However, there is enough room in this build that if you wanted to do the elemental swapping, you could. The only downside for this is instead of running a full build like this, you would just run your elemental bonus to 13 instead of 16. If you max all of these other mods and you have all of these 9 catalysts here, and then you ran with a level 13 elemental bonus, you would be able to slot that in and then swap per element, and that would actually be slightly better than electric enhancement against targets that aren't weak to electric. But if you wanted to, you would still get good value of running electric enhancement with a Xantic catalyst inside of it, and just scale it off that way. So that is the Excava. Like I said, it's about a tamer level of DPS, which is good. Don't let anyone tell you that tamer is a bad weapon. It's about 826k DPS. It is a single target weapon, and if they do any buffs or any changes to the Excava, it could end up being very strong, right? If they lower the amount of stacks required in order to trigger a voltage charge, it could be a very good weapon. Like, the more often you can proc the passive, the better it is. If they end up making this firearm damage multiplier even better than it is down here, it could be a good weapon. It's close enough to being a good weapon, and it's good enough to run if you want to invest in it and you like the way it looks and the way it plays. But unfortunately, they have this track record of not really wanting any of the ultimate assault rifle weapons to be stellar in any way, so it is just good as it stands right now. And again, a big reminder is if you're gonna run the Excava, I highly recommend keeping electric displacement field up at all times, and then just go for 3 stacks on the voltage charge every single time, and then release at full charge, and don't miss the buff window, because it will be up for 2 seconds and then disappear whether you fire or not. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.